Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Attack on Titan anime review. This one's going to be for Season 4, Episode 2, Midnight Train. And yeah, this was a very interesting episode in that you can definitely look at this one and kind of feel like, what exactly happened, because it was very much just character focused, character interactions, and like we cut scenes to scene. We had the characters traveling a little bit, different meetings and so on, but fundamentally there was, it was a lot of talking, not a lot of action. But I thought it was like intriguing the whole way through, to the point where this episode just flew by. Like, it ended and I felt like, oh wait, what? We're only like halfway through the episode, but no, we're at the 22-minute mark already. That was pretty impressive, and I think I really like what they're doing here, which is that we only know pretty much like two of these characters. We really only know Reiner and Zeke ahead of things, and they're already sort of the enemy to a degree. And then all the other characters is characterizing the Marley side of things, but primarily the Eldians. But we're getting to see the generals, the high ups. And what they're doing here, I think, is prior to reintroducing all of our Paradise Island characters, they're developing this side of things because I think they really want to hit home this idea of it's people on both sides. There's no like, this group is truly evil, this group is truly evil, this group is inherently right. Everything's complicated. That, can you truly hate like that many of the characters? I suppose some of the high ups on the Marley side of things, but again, even them, you have the sense that Eldia did something in the past and Marley was in a terrible position, which is why they had to act and gain control of some of the Titans. But then how they've handled their power is by completely oppressing the Eldians and then using them, brainwashing them. And obviously, like, the big point of this episode was Reiner revealing details about his infiltration onto Paradise Island and trying to sort of convince them that, like, give us examples of how all of the people on Paradise Island, all the Eldians there, are, devils. And he just goes through and explains completely sort of deadpan these sequences that we know of, like the Potato Girl scene, as if these are examples that prove how evil the enemy is. But the takeaway from this, and he doesn't really even see this, and I suppose this gives you that sense of he knows he has to talk about them in a way that gets across that these are terrible people. But the examples that he gives just present like normal people, normal character traits, borderline comedy in some cases, but realistic. They're not like these evil, like, other form of Eldians. No, they're just people. And you can see just the silence in the room after he says this. And his mother is shocked by this. Like, she is so brainwashed, I suppose, above all else, and is shocked to hear this, that everything she's known up to now could be wrong. And then Gabby, who you obviously get the sense could change her views. This is the first time she's heard about this, that the people on Paradise Island are just people. And that really seems to be the way they're going to go with this, is very much once they finally have all the characters interacting with each other, just kind of realize that it's not necessarily good versus bad, that it's just complicated politics, sort of ancient history coming into play. Just people are people and they happen to be on different sides. That's what's going to be very interesting with sort of Gabby going forward, because she is set up completely here. She is going to inherit the Armored Titan, but it seems like Reiner doesn't quite want her to, and is more leaning to, like, I think Falco maybe might be the way to go, so she doesn't have to have this important role and can maybe get out of it. Whereas, like, I suppose Falco is a little bit of a different type of character, and he kind of feels like the Armored Titan would be better being in the hands of someone who isn't maybe as, like, laser focused, loyal on this side of things as Gabby is. So, Reiner's a very complicated character at this point, and it's interesting that, at least in my impression, when he first started out, like, season 1 wasn't really that interesting. And even over the course of like season 2 and 3, I think it took time to get behind, like, yeah, this is a really fascinating character. But here, seeing him in, I suppose, his home, quote unquote, you really get the sense of just who this character is, of like, he does have this element of sort of like mixed allegiances almost, of like, he is loyal to Marley because he's going through with all of this, but he does have a connection to the people he was with all the time. He was with the scouts and so on. It's really interesting to consider, and I just thought that scene of his sort of family gathering was really well done to get across that, yeah, he's changed. Like, he's still in the Eldian Devils kind of thing, but he couldn't really see that what he was saying was describing very normal people like Sasha and so on. So that'll be interesting to see where things go. On the other side of things, I suppose Zeke was a little bit more in the spotlight in this episode. We saw him sort of speak up at one of the meetings that he wants to kind of go after Paradise Island again to get the resources, try and get the founding Titan back. In that, you know, the main takeaway from the first episode was that the other nations have high enough technology to combat Titans, and while Titans are still a huge factor and they ultimately won their battle, the main media takeaway from all of the other nations is that there's finally a crack in the armor, that they can finally develop stuff that is immediately capable of just blowing straight through the armored Titan, kind of specifically. So they kind of feel like, okay, we have to get all of the Titans back. That's going to be the only way we can maintain our power. And if that is just ultimately sort of where they go with Marley, is just they are this nation that just wants power and desperately tried to keep it, but the only way they can do it is by using their enemies', you know, special powers. That's really interesting to see, just that desperation. They act 100% like they're the ones in control, whereas they lost the Titans. If they couldn't use Eldians, like, what would they really have? Which obviously begs the question, how did they even gain control of the Titans in the first place overall? Now, this episode touches on some stuff. I assume they'll explain this a little bit more later on. I think it's Zeke who brings up the Tiber family, and that this is the family that the other Titan, the ninth of the 9 Titans, the one that hasn't been touched on basically at all up to now, is in. The Warhammer Titan is in this family line, and they tend to stay out of things. They seem to be a very rich family, but his idea is, what if this family suddenly sort of stops being sort of neutral behind the scenes and steps out and says, within a year we will reclaim Paradise Island and gain all the Titans back. That would be a huge sign, because in the past this clan played a massive role in terms of making the king in the past, the Eldian king, retreat to Paradise Island in the first place. So that they seem, in that sense, this legendary family almost. But what's the situation here? They seem to be setting up that it's going to be a big announcement, and my impression is that we'll build to this announcement, and this is probably when we'll see the big strike against Marley from our characters, the Paradise Island characters. I think it makes too much sense with the fact that we basically saw John in the first episode, and there's just, you get those senses of like, they talked about they'd sent like 30 boats or something like that out to Paradise Island, and none of them came back. They didn't quite get across that like they've been destroyed, so it almost gives the impression, yeah, what have they been doing? Surely the Paradise Island people have been building up their technology as well. And I think they will surprise everyone when they suddenly strike, and they just think like, oh, they're using the Titan powers that they have to defeat the ships. But you know, I think something bigger is going to happen, and the surprise is, I think, going to be in all the other seasons, our hero characters almost like acting as the villains from the perspective we're experiencing the story from here, which is that we're looking at things from the Marley side of things, and suddenly an attack from Paradise Island to most of the characters here is the enemy attacking, even though for the most part we consider that to be the reverse situation. That could be, I think, a really cool way to reintroduce all those characters. But we'll have to wait and see what they do. they still seem a little bit suspicious of Zeke, though they do let him have a little bit more of a leadership role. There's a few, I suppose, hints that he's maybe not really being fully truthful with everyone. One is that it doesn't appear that he has revealed to the people of Marley, the high-ups, that he actually has royal blood. In that was a big thing back with Dinah Fritz, Dinah back in the past, was just like, basically have her killed so she won't be used to just basically have lots of children, so they have the bloodline continuously going on. So I suppose he realizes that, for his own safety, you probably shouldn't say that. In that they specifically even have, I think it's Colt who's going to inherit the Beast Titan mention. It's not like you're a royalty or anything, and he's just like, yeah, sure. And then the other point is that he basically has a meeting with all of the other Titan shifters on the Marley side of things to basically plan this. We'll bring the Tiber family into things because we need to use the Warhammer Titan. And it seems to be just a normal meeting that they're allowed to have, but then it's revealed that they're actually being spied on by the Marley higher-ups. And they're like, okay, their meeting actually was pretty okay. One of them was a little bit, questioning of things, but he always gets things done in the end. And then the main guy is like, but what about the line that Zeke said, that not in this room, which seems to be some sort of a code to, okay, there's no high-ups in this room, but subtly say we are being, watched, so don't be like super truthful or vocal about anything specific. So that's kind of interesting that they're sort of teasing that, because again, it has been a good few years now because of the time skip since season 3, so stuff could have changed after what happened, but again, we need a lot more context before we properly get into that. Other stuff in this episode, Gabby is celebrated by all the Eldians as more or less a hero because of what she did in the first episode, because it's like big announcement that like she did that, and it wasn't just a crazy thing that she did that to save and help all of the other Eldian people. So she's viewed as almost like this goddess figure among the Eldians, which was kind of fun. Seeing their like triumphant return, the reunion with their families, it's a nice moment. But then you realize that like this is meant to be this very happy moment, but then this shouldn't be as like happy or like, this should be much better than it actually is. But it's still, we're going back to Libero, and it's still the internment zone, that there's still like a wall basically separating these people from the rest of Marley, that there's still that separation, and you can't forget in the middle of all of this that you're sort of getting behind these characters, that fundamentally the people of Marley still treat the Eldians like they're all devils and utilize just the ones that they can get value out of, because they can turn into Titans and they're the only ones capable of using the power of the 9 Titans. That's how they have their power, and that's the only reason that I think the Marleyans really tolerate the Eldians like at all. I think we do need to, I suppose, get into introducing a few more Marleyan characters who are a little bit more sympathetic towards the Eldians. Now, I think their sort of commander character was at least a little bit sympathetic, in that he was like, okay, they're all making a lot of noise celebrating what Gabby did in the back, let them away with it this time. That was a bit like, okay, he seems a bit okay about this, he's more willing to talk to them and not isolate them completely. So that was kind of nice to see. But it's still the core of what we saw in Grisha's flashback, but now there's this celebration of like, oh, we survived, we're allowed to return, happy reunion that everyone wasn't killed. But then you cut to the people who were on the front lines digging the trenches, and they're all like shell shocked, they all have like PTSD, and the Marleyans are still making fun of them, like just screaming boom around them, knowing that it'll freak them out and so on. And it was interesting to cut to then Gabby explaining what she did and also saying boom, that so far she's been really, really successful, but she hasn't yet experienced any sort of a major tragedy or like really been on like the front lines of terrible stuff happening just yet, or at least as far as we know. So there's lots of interesting bits of setup, I suppose, going forward, that like, okay, something's going on with Falco, because of course from the first episode it basically seems like, because of the whole memory time thing, he's probably going to be a Titan shifter at some point, but we don't know which one. Gabby seems to set up that way, but it also seems like she is going to have her eyes open potentially to the truth of the people of Paradise Island, because it's almost very easy to forget because we haven't seen those characters in a while, that yeah, they're talking about them as like the Eldian devils, but the whole point of the first 3 seasons was getting across how trapped inside the walls everyone is, that they feel like cattle inside the walls. The Titans are these unassailable threats, and then the truth is gradually revealed, and then by the end, the realization that like, this is the ocean, that's how little they know about the rest of the world, that they thought this was everything inside the walls and just a little bit outside. But no, this is just a tiny island where basically the remains of the Eldians sort of held up, and then this is where the Eldians that are punished by the Marleyans are sent. That's why all of this sort of happens. And that presents a whole different view, remembering that that's the full context of it. So I really like the kind of depth, the detail, the nuance, I suppose the shades of grey is the main thing at the moment. So really good stuff, even if it wasn't maybe the most eventful episode. Like, we went from an episode at the first episode being pretty much a full action set piece to a lot of talking, but very, very interesting talking. But yeah, they're my thoughts on this episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are. But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.